Hello, everyone. I am continuing on the journey of documenting all all of the things, when it comes to the self-led artist platform and the CRADS framework that I'm developing. Will it be called the CRADS framework by the end of this year? I really don't know. I'm just going to call it a framework that I'm developing to allow artists to have a foundational, structured architecture for how they live their life. That's the aim. It's a huge project that I'm taking on with this. It's the more I look into it, after reflecting on all of the patterns that I've seen in my career so far, connecting to the amount of artists that I have connected to, I'm really, really getting down to the nitty gritty of recognizing how much of a systemic and cultural issue this is. It goes really deep, and there is not, especially not within education, at least, I'm within music education currently, there is not frameworks, curriculum that is essentially creative life design, creative life architecture, where you get offered tools, support, and step by step structure to help you navigate your life as someone who does not fit into the systems that are designed for us. I assume something like this doesn't exist because people, let's not call it even people, but like the powers that be, or the way that systems are run, don't want artists to live happy, sustainable, self-authored, self-empowered lives, because then they're in control. So there's potentially something around power and control there. Who knows? I don't know if it's conscious, but like in terms of the collective consciousness, there's definitely some sort of disparity and contrast there. Yeah, and I'm just continuing to research every day. There's just little bits of research that are connected to. I'm going to call it a project because it is. There's no other word really that can describe what I'm doing. There's so many layers to it, and each day, my general rhythm is that I will observe, I will collect information, I will understand it, I will put it through the lens of the framework and how I can make all of this fragmentation coherent, and then it runs through that system, out the other side into something that can be taught and something that can be eventually curriculumed and booked and coursed and workshops. And I'm using the full loop of my abilities and natural talents and gifts, from the observing, the researching, the collecting the information. It's very Gemini of me to do that, and the communication as I talk things through and as I share it publicly and build this archive of my journey. This is all helping me get closer to my end goal of having this reputable body of work that lasts and stands on its own, my own intellectual property that provides artists with a map that they were never given. And even in a small way, if that's something that I can just imagine, maybe in 5-10 years down the line, it could take longer. Who knows how long this journey will take? Because I want to approach it with depth. I don't want to approach it. There's no point rushing this. I can sense that this is a very, very long arc. But I imagine at some point, many years down the line, I imagine an artist who felt like I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, picking up this book of finalized framework and support and guidance and help called The Architecture of a Creative Life or something similar. I think that's a beautiful name and it covers what I'm doing quite well. Holding it and understanding that everything they need in terms of guidance on how to live their life is in that book. I'm so passionate about it because I wish that when I was in my early 20s, that there had been the option for me to have something like that, something tangible that I could hold, that was like, if you follow this, even little bits of it, even just 20% of it, your life's going to improve by like substantially, like your life is going to improve exponentially. I keep having this flashback recently to a phone call that I had with my mum. I must have been about 18 or 19, and I was studying music. I knew I was going somewhere. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that it was connected to exploration, especially at that age, and music and creating. And I was about 18, 19. I'd just moved around that time, and my mum was on the phone to me quite frantic. And she just said, "You need to get a job. You need to get a job." And I remember, potentially in my neurodivergent or artistic system breaking state, being very confused. Not because I was expecting them to support me. From very young, I left home when I was 17. I've never been supported financially for long by my parents. By the age of, I say, 19 onwards, I've not a penny. I haven't received a penny from them, and that's absolutely, a very normal thing for a lot of kids. But I will say I experienced independence very early on in life, and I left home very early on in life, and it's caused me to mature quicker than other people around me in some ways. And in some ways I'm still a very young kid at heart. But yeah, I remember that conversation and my mum saying, "You need to get a job." And I'm like, what? Like, there has to be another way. I don't understand. That means that 30 hours of my time, if I wanted a full-time job, is going to be taken up doing something that exhausts me, that I'm not meant to be doing. Like, I don't want, why would I do that? I've got other things. I've got so much I need to get on with. I don't have time for a job. I was just confused by the concept. I was like, but I know what I want to do. And, the reality was, well, it doesn't pay you, babe, So there was this thing of like, right, okay, welcome to capitalism. Welcome to the systems that you're born into, right? And I think a lot of artists get to this place. They're like, as a musician in my 20s, I was like, I would just, success to me would be just being able to make a living out of this. I would love that. And over time, I went from an artist who was also working in full-time jobs in different areas in corporate companies. I would always last for about 2 years, sometimes less. It depended on the job. I wanted to do well, but I would always, my dopamine would run out eventually, and I would either be told that I had to leave, or I would start rebelling against the systems. And it got to about 27, 28, and I was like, fucking hell, I've really got to do something about this, because I'm basically working part-time and the rest of it I'm just dedicating to my artistry. That's fine. I'm happy to live a life. Like, money was not of importance to me, especially in that phase of my life. And I remember sitting on the beach. It was a pivotal time. I was actually with Alexi, who I did the first podcast series with. We reconnected at a similar pivotal time. We tend to do this. We come back and connect in cycles when we need one another during big shifts. And this was a big shift moment, and I was with them. And I looked out on the ocean, or upon the ocean, and I was like, I've got to make a fucking, like, I can feel it. This feels like energetically like a hurricane is coming. It's like the calm before the storm, and I'm about to, and in astrological energetic terms, I entered very intensely entered my Saturn return. Um, and if any of you here follow astrology, it sits within my house of the second house, which is of values and finances and money. And I had to think on my feet. I had to think quick. I had to think, right, I want this to be aligned. There are other ways of making money. I've got to freelance. I have to. This is how I'm built. And I knew in the back of my mind that if I were to do this, the level of growth, self-trust, and confidence that would build from this phase would be a lot. And I could sense that there was this building authority in me, and I knew that I could focus, and I knew I had ambition. And so with that, I pushed forward, and I started to teach one-on-one music students. I was living with someone at the time who'd just started to do that, so I observed them for a little time and then started to do that myself. And actually, I feel like I was like divinely supported. I don't know. I think that I felt so lucky, but I was also really connected to the relational building that I was building with the clients that I had. But I went from not having a single client or student to building up a self-employed business of 0 to 25 students, I think in less than 3 months. It was insane. It was the most rapid thing I've ever seen. And I was like, okay, I can build a business and I can do it well. There were other factors. I mean, there were things that just felt like I was being helped so much by the forces that be outside of myself, someone that I was connected to from years ago, my friend Jenna, shout out Jenna if you listen to this one day, who was a music teacher and was a self-employed music teacher as well. And they just so happened to be moving to a different city, and they were like, do you want to take on, I can't take these clients, I'm moving into a different stage of my life. And I think I ended up getting about 5 or 6 or maybe more from then. Something else happened with a similar thing with someone else, and the others just kept, it was like word of mouth. And I had, age of 6 years old all the way through to 50s, there was no rules as to what these students were. And that was such a learning tank for me when it came to educating. And when you're one-on-one teaching someone, it builds your confidence fast and your authority fast. And I look back now and I see all of these moments have been leading up to this project. I can see it now very clearly, but I didn't know that's what I was building up to at the time. So I did private tutoring for quite a long time. I say quite a long time. All of this journey, from me looking out on the beach being like, I don't know what to do, I'm just a lost artist, my client base, right? My student, that was me. This was only 5 years ago, really. So all of this growth, and I was speaking to a friend, Sophie, who has been shadowing me in some of my tutoring. She was like, God, I've only got 5 years to like catch up with you, because she's 27, the same age as me as when I started this journey. And I was like, a fucking lot can happen in 5 years, especially when you're in that hurricane. That I called it the pressure cooker years, essentially. And that's what, for some people, it's like a Saturn return experience, or just a pressure cooker type experience where you can feel energetically that you're rapidly growing. It was rapid growth. So that was the first part, private tutoring. And then from private tutoring, what was my next step? This is where it gets blurry, because there were some ideas that were coming to me at the time, because I was like, I'd like to get involved in doing something a little bit more expansive than one-on-one. I could sense that energy was expanding again. So I was like, well, I can produce music. I've got 10 plus years of experience doing that as an artist. I've had my artist years of developing my craft. Why don't I make something like a workshop and invite people to it. At the time, what I was doing something called 60-minute beats on Instagram. So every week I was sharing my music, and that was getting quite a bit of traction. And I was respected amongst my small group of musician friends in Brighton. And there was like a buzz around a lot of us at that time. So then I shared Bessie's Beat School, which was just a small group of people. And the first one, I managed to connect via my housemate at the time, via her boyfriend, who did freelance work at Waterbear College, which I'm now head of year for. Um, they connected me to Waterbear, and I hosted Bessie's Beat School in their HQ building. It was very sweet of them to allow me to do it. I can't remember if I paid a fee or not, or if it was just a sweet collaboration, like a startup ICU kind of moment. Can't remember the details, but I did it. And the founder of Waterbear's daughter was one of the people in my workshop. So Bruce picked up their daughter. I can't remember if it was him or it was they were connected, but anyway, Bruce asked the daughter, how was it? How did you find the time? And the daughter obviously was very receptive and said they had a great time and they learned a lot from me. I can't remember if it was at the end of the workshop or a few days later. I think I was still in the building, and the head of undergraduate studies came up to me and offered me a job on the spot for the college. So I was like, okay, this is all happening just because I'm following my intuition and feeling like this. I know that this is within my skill set. There's something pulling me towards this world. And then all of that happened quite quickly. So I'm like, right, okay, now I'm in with this college. I do not have educational experience in a college setting. I have not taught a class before. And at the time, at 28, 29, I was still fucking nervous at the idea of doing that. I hadn't, my growth had not reached that point, right? So all I knew is that I had to do it, and I was going to be shitting myself the whole time. On the side, alongside this, at the same time, this is all within the same year, I had seen a studio advertise that they were looking for producers. I think they were just at the beginning of their journey. It was South Lane Studios, which unfortunately they've now closed, but Meg and Sam are doing amazing things. And I sent them a link to my portfolio, which was just stuff, again, because I'd had that exploration years, all of that artistry years, learning how to produce myself, refining it. I had a portfolio and I gave that to them, and I did my first producer session. Again, I just came in with the amount of confidence I had. I remember being highly dissociative during that first session because I was essentially sitting in a studio that I'd never used before, looking at an artist and kind of, but this was all my formative, all of this built who I am now, and I'm going to continue to grow and expand. And that expansion is just, I can sense that I'm at this kind of comfort level, and I can feel that this is happening again, in probably in a bit more of a slow burner way. I'm hoping it's not a pressure cooker growth cycle, but I'm sensing that this isn't time to be comfortable. Like, I'm ready for my next mission or assignment or whatever that is. And I think it's obviously very closely connected to the self-led artist and what I'm doing here, but also getting back into my artistry, but in a more embodied way with the experience that I've had, and knowing that my voice is a channel and presence within that, and the power and the impact I can have there. And I think it's all connected. All of this is coherent now. Me as an artist, as a producer, as a mentor, as a framework builder is all part of one coherent system, whereas before it was fragmented and I didn't really have that sense of direction. Anyway, I remember when I taught my first class at Waterbear, and I told them all that it was their first day too, And I told them, I said, it's my first day also, so we're all in the same boat. And they were so supportive, and we got through it together. And I read everything, and it was for the first 2 years. I've been there for 5 years now. I've been at Waterbear for 5 years. First 2 years, challenging every week, highly intense every week. I hadn't learned yet that I didn't have to mask and over function the whole time. I was still learning that. So I was also, as an empath, I still am, but even more so, slightly too emotionally connected to my students in terms of the depth of my connection with them. I would know all of their life histories. We'd talk, and they felt that connection, and it actually was one of the reasons that I ended up getting the head of year role, was because of how deeply I was connecting to the students and making them feel seen, making them feel heard, and that was a real driver for me. Like, I wanted to really make a difference in this place, and it served me well, and it got me a higher up position, which I'm grateful for. But I realized over time that my over functioning, as in like not really listening to my body's signals, and kind of if a student needed more help, even though I was probably like needing to go home, or I would stay late, and I was noticing that that wasn't sustainable. And I'd already experienced overwork, burnout, to the point of hospitalization when I was 30, around that time, 30, 31. I had to get a heart monitor fitted, because I wasn't living a sustainable life. I was pushing myself too hard. I stopped vaping in the studio because I was doing a lot of that. It was very kind of life. Stopped drinking coffee. So everything slowed down a bit. And I had a partner at the time who kept telling me, what you're doing is not sustainable long term. And I thank her for that now. I see it now. I didn't see it at the time, but I see it. I see it now with more maturity. So yeah, and then I kind of came into the head of year role only 2 years ago. And for that first year, we were building curriculum and a year group from scratch, effectively. So I had my first experience of being in an authoritative position where people were looking to me to build the framework of what this year group was studying. And again, that was another growth edge for me, because I was sitting in meetings with the heads of the education team, and they were looking to me for guidance and how I felt about how things were running, and so that was quite a big deal. And obviously this year things have been a little bit less pressured because that framework has been built now. And once it's built, we can kind of just refine it, obviously, and see what worked and what didn't. But for the most part, it stays the same. So that was happening. And this is the first year where things have kind of felt that the growth edge slowed down, at least in the world of Waterbear. Things were built, things were running. I knew my job well. I'd done enough lessons. If anything, it became a bit more repetitive. And I found that I had a lot more space to think about my next challenge, my next intellectual, I need to be intellectually stimulated, and I need to be working towards things. That's just how I'm wired. And lots of things in my personal life were happening which I won't divulge that on here, but many different experiences over the course of the last 2 years have also shaped where I am now. So it was a culmination of lots of different things happening. And this couldn't have happened any other way at any other time. Previous versions of me would not be able to host webinars saying that I'm developing a framework to support artists to live sustainable creative lives that last, and feel confident that if I continue to do iterative research over the course of however many years it takes, so I'm willing to stick it out for that long, that I will be able to develop educational content, curriculums, frameworks, books, courses, intellectual property, that lasts a lifetime, that becomes established, that becomes well known, and most importantly, becomes so practically useful for so many artists like me when I was, in my early 20s. And so age isn't even a thing. You can be lost as an artist at any age. But I remember where I was, and I feel like I've done this rapid growth to get to a point where I can now educate others with the tools that I've built to support them. And one thing that I want to ensure, because my education brain around this is really, really switched on, I need to also ensure that my artistry, my heart, my expression does not get lost in this process. Because I do find when I get into a new role and when I'm working, I focus a lot of my attention on the strategy, the whatever side of the brain that is. And ultimately, my art is very powerful, and I need to remember that that's the fuel for the engine. Also, for me to release a book eventually, or be someone who is more well known for, and someone like a go-to person for creative life design and framework building for creative people, I need to live the life that I'm talking about. I need to walk the walk. So if I'm releasing an album every year, or if I'm doing live shows, and if I'm showing myself as an artistic, real, embodied human being with tangible bodies of work, that's supporting, like, they support each other. This is what I mean by everything kind of clicking into place. And all of these realizations have only happened since the beginning of this year, really. It's been this, like a sculpture, having to cut away at the pieces and refine it, and kind of really get to the bottom of what it is. What's this core thing that I'm trying to do here and explore? And it's designing, creating, which is using my artistic brain, tangible, practical, structural frameworks for those who desperately need them in systems not built for them. And it's a brand new category of education. So yeah, that's how mental and crazy I am. But yeah, like I say, there was no other point in my life that this could have been possible up until now. And I can sense that there is my next move happening soon. And I think that everything that's come before this has been a training ground for what I'm actually meant to do, which is divulging onto my own path, understanding that, that sense of financial security, especially at the beginning, I need to have that confidence. And it's all about that self-trust and belief in yourself. I can navigate the world with the skill set that I have. I've got the CV, I've got the background. No matter where I go, if I kind of reduce and teach in a different way to ensure that my bills are covered at the moment. So I free up my time for my own artistry, which is the fuel, and the self-led artist, which is the engine. That long term, over the course of the next 15-20 years of my life, is what's going to build something long lasting, stable, and immovable, and security for myself, let's be honest, in the long term. I'm not looking for quick wins, and I'm willing to be patient with this process for as long as it takes, and it will likely take a long time, because I feel in my bones, intuitively, right down to the bottom of my soul, that what I'm doing and what I'm heading towards will hold me for a lifetime. And that's ironically what I'm researching. Similar thing, it's all of it's connected. So it feels really exciting, and Today I had an interview with my friend James. He's an embodiment coach, and we talked about the second pillar of the CRADS framework, which is regulation. We had a beautiful conversation, and I learned so many things, including if regulation is our second pillar, there are sub pillars and there are bottom to top areas of that pillar that I'm discovering more about, including more about sleep, nutrition, movement, and how this is the core foundation for everything when it comes to living a successful, healthy, sustainable, creative life. You have to have regulation before anything. And this is what I mean as well. CRADS framework currently is CRADS, but I am considering that our regulation, our consciousness, our essence is number one. And from there, everything is built from that foundation, from that safe space. The argument is that you can potentially... Yeah, I'm just doing some recording, buddy. That's all right. The argument is potentially the foundational area of regulation definitely is at the beginning. However, I know I've created from dysregulated states. Not only that, but when I felt really emotional or heightened or like I need to process something, I've gone to music but that is me regulating myself. So then the question becomes, it's the chicken and the egg. What came first, the creativity or the regulation, or did they both happen at the same time? What comes first, what's being processed first? Because you could say the same for going to the gym and like moving it all out of your system. So that's a question that I'm going to wrestle with a little bit more. Another question that came up for me earlier today was, if I'm going to hand people eventually this, it might start as like a workbook and then it will be an actual book. If I'm going to hand over artists this, here's your structure, here's your guide. I know how an artist's brain works because I am one. And I know that if an authority says, here's a structure, do this, I'm going to rebel the fuck against it. And I'm going to be like, no, I just want to be free. But I'm trying to push with the truth that freedom is not the absence of structure. It's ensuring freedom can run better with the correct structure behind it, especially one that's built for artists, So it's that question of like, how do I frame this, and what is my language going to look like over time to ensure that artists feel like this is a supportive structure that they don't need to rebel against, enough for them to know like you're helping yourself by doing this. Because I've been in, periods of my life where I haven't been looking after my body, or I've not been putting the right thing, or I've been smoking or drinking. And someone could knock me over the head time and time again and say, you're living in your best interest right now. You're kind of self-destructing and self-sabotaging. And nothing that my parents could say about you need to go to the gym or whatever it was could get through to me, because the pillars before that, like regulation, but there's stuff underneath that as well. Your foundation, your emotional foundation, your limiting beliefs, what shaped you before becoming an artist, that can get in the way of your brain being able to do shit. You might be sitting in a class with a student and I'm like, can you just fill out this? All you need to do is go on here, copy that and attach it. And some of them can't even do that task. And it's not because they're cognitively impaired. It's because there is a block emotionally around believing that they can do it. It feels like a mountain. It feels overwhelming. So there's this sense of overwhelm that stops artists even getting to the first hurdle sometimes for years, and that's something I need to look into as well. So yeah, there's a few things that have come up for me this week. every conversation I have is more data collection, and I'm collecting it as acutely and precisely as I can. And I've been recommended to read the book The Power of Systems by my friend Sophie this week as well. So I'm going to look into that and do some other research. But I'm just allowing it gently to form. Even if I do one interview a week or a podcast episode, I write about it on Substack. I then share and talk publicly on YouTube. That's enough per week for me right now. Because I can sense I'm being pulled into this next phase, which isn't completely built yet, but I feel as though if I follow my intuition, as I always have, and it's led me here, there is growth on the other side of that, you know. So yeah, it's just a case of having patience and trusting the process at this stage, but also allowing there to be sustainability in how I work. You know, I don't want to burn myself out during this process, and I will attempt to keep it slow and steady. I can sense that this is obsessive, and I actually don't think that that's a bad thing in terms of what I'm creating. It makes me very happy. It's not hurting anyone else, and if anything, long term, with the vision and the way I can see this working, it's going to support a lot of people. It's a big old job. But yeah, I thought I would do a second one and just kind of talk as I have. And I'll continue to share each week what I find. I'm then going to do an online webinar at the end of, well, probably the beginning of April. I'm going to do one each month called What's Emerging, or like a similar name, where I bring artists back and be like, right, I've done a lot more things, a lot more research. I've done interviews this month, and this is what's emerging from that research, and this is what I found out, and being able to share that with people for free on the online webinar, and then have more conversations with them and collect that information. And so that would be like a monthly thing. So if I were to do those small things per week and then have that as a monthly round off, I think that will be enough each month to collect what I need to collect to build the bigger project underneath. But yeah, I'm happy with how things are running, and it fills me with a lot of happiness and joy to know that it's going in the right direction right now.